Just note before I get into my questioning, please feel free for all of the witnesses to send further information, including specific recommendations. I know there's been a number that have been outlined here today. Now, a couple of yes or no questions to all three witnesses in fairly rapid succession, if I could. And the first question is an effective access to information system essential in a modern democracy? We'll start with Mr. Cutler.
Yes.
Mr. Rubin?
Definitely.
And Mr. Conacher?
Yes, very much so.
So do you find that our current system in this country would meet the threshold that you would believe is necessary for a modern democracy? And I'll go again, Mr. Cutler.
No.
Mr. Rubin.
Absolutely not.
Mr. Conacher.
No, I think we're ranked now the 54th in the world.
Okay.
So we're way behind.
No, I appreciate that. So, Mr. Conacher, regarding ATIP requests, would you be able to highlight some of, in your observation, some of the worst offenders within governmental departments? Could you highlight those for us? And again, I'm on a tight timeline, so as quickly as is possible.
I think it's just simply better to refer you to the Information Commissioner's report. Every year it changes, which the institutions are the worst. The overall record is very bad at meeting the 30-day deadline, which is the legal requirement. And so the violations are rampant across the board, across all institutions. I've waited years myself.
Go back to Bill C-58, which allowed proactive disclosure of lots of information from this government. So I'm wondering, I guess, from all three of you, if you think that this helped make government more open and transparent in any way. Mr. Rubin, you can start.
Well, no, it didn't, because it's one-sided information. Take briefing notes, lists that are prepared. Well, so what do you get? You get, then you go and get the briefing notes. They're sanitized talking points. They have nothing to do with the real operations of government, which people should have the right to know. So that in itself is illustrative of the proactive disclosure. You get a few Prime Minister's records, but you can't get all of his other records. So it's a farce.
Mr. Do you see anything more open and transparent in government since we've had Bill C-58?
Absolutely nothing. I have seen really no change from one bill to the other, except the fact that the whole process has fallen apart. The idea of getting information in a timely fashion has been thrown out the window. They don't care because they know nothing will happen if they don't do it. So what can you do about it? I can't do anything about it. You are the only people who can do something about that.
And Mr. Conacher, would you like to weigh in as well?
Yes, Bill C-58 ignored this committee's unanimous June 2016 report. ignored all of the other stakeholders. The information commissioners have documented in their annual reports very clearly that things are worse than they have been in the past. And I challenge you as committee members to work together and put forward a private member bill. Ignore your leaders if they're saying we don't want to do this, because the June 2016 unanimous report didn't work to foster key changes. And so I challenge you all, work together. Put out a unanimous report and then put a private member bill together and jointly all support it, and challenge the rest of your colleagues to vote against it and vote for excessive government secrecy and denial of the public's right to know.
Mr. Rubin, do you see any value in cabinet confidence?
With a few areas, I could see it, maybe for 2-3 years. But in most areas, no. It's just highly overrated. I went and got cabinet discussion papers when they're available, about 400 of them, and it was just like a municipal council records. There's nothing in there that in most cases was highly sensitive. It's so overblown. They're not cabinet confidence, they're cabinet records. They're just like any other record in the government. And for people to take the example of cabinet confidences, do you know that the records of cabinet are never kept in full, no transcript? They're just sanitized summaries, and that is not full and frank discussion. And even if it is full and frank discussion, Canadians have the right to know that.
1 minute.
What do you think of cabinet confidence?
I have the most limited experience of any of them. What struck me was when you were talking about not keeping records. Well, text messaging is rampant in the government. They're really avoiding it, and they know what they're doing, because if they text back and forth, there's no written record. And it's becoming more and more common to just avoiding the whole business. I'm certain Mr. Rubin would agree with me, and Mr. Conacher would too.
Okay, so just to follow up, a few thoughts, and then I do have one more important question that I want to ask. Mr. Conacher, any question or thoughts on Bill C-58 you'd like to share with the committee?
Bill C-58 was a step backwards in some ways. It certainly didn't keep the 2015 promises of the Liberals to make government information open by default, which is the direct quote from the Liberals' 2015 platform.
Okay.
The commissioner has power now to make orders, but it's not strong enough. You need power to make and a requirement for minimum penalties if you violate the law. That's going to change the whole incentive to comply right away, and that's a key change.
No, and I appreciate that. And I see Mr. Rubin, just 10 seconds if you could.
Well, Bill C-58 destroyed the Access Act because it hived off as phony proactive the Prime Minister's records, Minister's records, and a host of other things.
On October 5th, we were talking with the Information Commissioner, and I asked if the government had a culture of secrecy or openness, and she said it was mostly a culture of secrecy. Do you have any comments on that?
I assume you're asking me again?
Oui, je m'excuse.
Yes, for you, yes.
Et pardon-moi aussi, il faut que je pratique mon français.
And apologies, I have to practice my French, so I will respond in English.
Yes, there is a culture of secrecy, but it's really because the Act, it's called the Access to Information Act. It really should be called the Guide to Keeping Information from the Public that they have a right to know. And so it's not surprising, because such a law encourages a culture of secrecy, not a culture of transparency. As many others have pointed out for now more than 20 years, certainly in my experience, and many reports have called out, and this House as well called unanimously for key changes to stop this culture of secrecy. So yeah, it's well established, and again, we're in the 50s, and behind more than 50 other countries in the world in terms of best practice access to information standards.
Avec vous encore, Monsieur Conacher.
Another question for you, Mr. Conacher. In your experience, you talk about good governance. The national security exception, is it too often used for disclosing contracts or agreements between parties?
Yes, and like all exceptions, again, is too broad, and there cannot be exclusions at all, and there has to be a proof of harm if disclosure happened, and also a public interest override, with the commissioner able to examine all documents. And often in the whole area of contracts, of commercial information, much more information is protected that needs to be, all that needs to be protected is very much proprietary information that is really the basis of a corporation's operations. Anything more than that,
Merci
protecting
beaucoup.
contractees,
Thank you.
it's all excessive government secrecy.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cutler, I would like to start by thanking you for being here and thank you for all the work you've done over the past few years. With regards to what the Information Commissioner said about it being a culture of secrecy, what do you think about this?
Excusez en anglais. My French has really declined since I've retired officially from the government.
Sans problème.
If you don't use it, you lose it. Yes, there is a culture of secrecy, and it's hard to explain, except nobody wants to tell you anything. That's really what it is. It's closed units, and you ask access to information, they tell you, well, and that's what I said. The RCMP told me what I was asking for was information, not documents. Well, that's a way of preventing me from getting into where I want to be. And this happens all the time. It's like a closed door, and I'm out there banging on it, trying to get in. I have a battering ram. It's not working. I'm using expressive material, but it's so frustrating because they have the culture.
So I appreciate that. So now I have a few more specific questions that I'll ask for a little bit more information about. And first, Mr. Cutler, you mentioned some loopholes in 30 or 40 seconds, if you could. Just talk about how this committee could make some recommendations to fix some of the challenges surrounding loopholes.
There's a simple loophole, which I mentioned to you before, was I've made an access request. I've been waiting 60 days for the acknowledgement. They've cashed the check, but they have not acknowledged my access request. The 30 days, which they will ask for an extension on, I guarantee it, but the 30 days doesn't start until they send me the letter.
Right.
So they've got 60 days already, and now they're going to look for more time?
Yeah. Mr. Conacher, is there anything that you'd like to add in just a few seconds?
Yes, just in terms of submissions, I have made a submission to the committee. You will be receiving it once it's translated of the 18 recommendations. Just to pick up on one that Michel Drapeau spoke about on Monday, his suggestion to have a right to go to court after 1 year, I think that's not the way to go, because the courts don't move any more quickly and also have a backlog. The real solution is Parliament should be required to provide whatever amount of funding the Commissioner proposes annually, that the Auditor General and Parliamentary Budget Officer assess and determine is needed to ensure effective, timely enforcement of the Act and effective training of public officials about how to uphold the right to know and the right of access effectively. And that would solve a lot of the problems, because along with the penalties that I suggested, and everyone would know you're going to get caught if you're breaking the law and you're going to get penalized very soon. And that would clean things up enormously.
That, and just in a few seconds, Mr. Rubin, would you have anything to add to that?
We just start with creative avoidance of a massive scale, record destruction if it's a draft. Also, oral communications is rampant. You name it, this government and previous governments have done it.
Okay.
I don't feel reassured, and I don't think that Canadians will feel reassured when we're talking about a culture of secrecy and incompetency. If the trend continues, what will happen? I'll start with Mr. Cochler.
Well, my experience I went through the sponsorship scandal, obviously, and everybody said things were going to improve. And what I have witnessed since then, 2006, is a deterioration. The society, and the more the federal government accepts it, the more society accepts corruption. And you start looking at what people are representing. They're representing the worst and not the best. And access, when we're trying to get the information out, they're again giving us the worst, not the best that they can give us. With some exceptions, don't get me wrong, and a lot of the access officers really want to do a good job, but their hands are tied by the legislation, by what's going on. They give out I've had misinformation given to me, and the answer is, when I'm challenging it, go to the information commissioner. I'm going, well, wait a sec, I can prove you're wrong when you're telling me I can't have something, but you're saying I have to go to the information commissioner. There doesn't seem to be a good solution under the present act. We are a third world country in our legislation, and there's no denying it. We cannot maintain we're up there. We're third world.
Well, I think trying to get a public employee to talk to you is like trying, I don't know, to do something that you can't do. And we have a serious problem in this country where people are intimidated by excessive rules from central agencies like Treasury Board, the Prime Minister's Office, the PCO, and that intimidation ripples through everything we do. And when corporations add their 2 cents in and objections, and when law enforcement say it's a matter of security, national security, on and on it goes, you don't stand a chance if you're just the average person. And so what we have to do is get rid of those, not the people, but the attitude, and start from a constitutional right to know.
Yes. Scandalous behavior, whether it's dishonesty or unethical behavior, secretive behavior or waste, the more it happens, the more it becomes routine, the less it becomes news, and the more accepted it becomes, as Mr. Cutler was highlighting. And that leads to decline. And so that's why we need these wholesale systemic changes to change the culture, to penalize wrongdoing, to discourage violations of the public's right to know, and reverse the trend, which is more and more encouragement of denial of the public's right to know. And if these changes are not made, things will just get worse.